All right, so in lesson 16, we're learning about collision detection. Collision, that word specifically means when two things collide or touch each other. You might have like two cars get into a collision when they hit one another. So collision is when two things are touching. And then we'll learn about abstraction, which is a simplified representation of something more complex. So an example of abstraction, taking something complicated and making it more simple, or making something easier to understand. So here's an example of abstraction that you might see in math. We start off with this really complicated formula, 2x plus 3x plus 5y plus 6y plus 12 plus 6. Wow, that's complicated. So instead of doing that, right, we simplify. So 2x plus 3x becomes 5x, 5y and 6y become 11y, 12 and 6 become 8, and now we have a simplified version of this problem we could work with. That is abstraction. Abstraction is taking something complicated, like we have here, and making it simpler, like we have down here. Another abstraction, what we learned yesterday, sprite.x gets sprite.x plus 3. That's the counter pattern. And now we have this code, sprite.velocityx gets 3, which is a much simpler way to do the same thing. So that is the main idea of abstraction. Moving on to our sample game here. So this is like the game we made yesterday. But look, now the mushroom, when it hits the frog, it changes its animation. So we're going to learn about that. So in 3 here, I want to go over this in the video because I want to show you the code here is purposefully really complicated. Look at how complicated this code is. I don't even want to explain it, let alone try to interpret it. So the whole point here is that we're not going to worry about how complicated this is because we're going to use abstraction and make it much simpler. Read the if statements. So we see there's a bunch of if statements. Would you want to write this code every time that sprites need to touch each other? Check if tack is touching balloon, right? Oh my goodness, no. Nobody wants to write all that code. But we'll see how it works. When you hit run, move the tack, look, when they make contact, it pops. So we're going to see a simpler version of this in part 4. All right, part 4, this is where we actually have to code something. And this will be the last one I do in this video because I just want to get you guys started on lesson 16. So write out the math each time you want to check the two sprites are touching can take a while. So a programmer created the is touching block. So we use, instead of all that code we just saw in that if statement, we instead have is touching. So we can check when one sprite is touching another sprite. So if I want to check is touching into the if block here, so I can show right here's where it's going to go. Add your block here. Great. So one of our sprite properties is touching. We're going to put that in here. And you want to, we can't figure out what sprite is, right? So we have two sprites, tack and balloon. I want to check if the tack is touching the balloon. So now using that code, and now it pops. And that's really all we needed to get done here. Let's check and see if it works the other way around. I'm just curious. Balloon is touching tack. Set and run. It works both ways. I just think it makes more sense the way I'd say it out loud, right? If I'm thinking I want the balloon to pop when the tack touches the balloon, I'm going to use tack first and then balloon as the target. But that's all there is to part 4. So we can hit finish. And now you're ready to continue on the rest of the lesson without my help.